Welcome to Women Entrepreneurs Radio. I'm your host, Deborah Bailey. And when I started this show in 2008, I was on a mission to promote women-owned businesses and help women succeed by providing resources and valuable tips from other women and men, small business owners. In each interview, my guests speak openly about their triumphs, the scary times, and tough decisions they had to make along the way. Women Entrepreneurs Radio is about showing women how to harness their natural strengths to achieve success on their own terms. Did you know that you can find the Women Entrepreneurs Radio podcast on many podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and YouTube also? If you listen on Apple Podcasts, please take a moment to share your feedback and a review. 5 stars is always great, because the more that you share your feedback, the easier it will be for the show to be found by more listeners. So I hope you'll take a moment to do that. And as well, you can stop by the blog, womenentrepreneursradio.com, and you can find extended bios of the show guests and articles and announcements of interest to women business owners. So please make sure you stop by the blog and also subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Oh, wait, before you go, you can also stop by dbaileycoach.com to find out more about my nonfiction books and about my online writing courses for fiction authors. And dbaileycoach.com/brightbooks is where you'll find my paranormal and fantasy romance novels. And now, let's get started with the show. Hi everyone, welcome to Women Entrepreneurs Radio, and I'm your host, Deborah Bailey. I'm really glad that you could join us today. And now I want to introduce my guest, Sandra Hughes, founder of Life Reinvented, gets to the heart of what it takes for solopreneurs to create the business of their dreams. Life Reinvented gives established and early-stage solopreneurs the tools, training, guidance, and community they need for personal and financial success. Women entrepreneurs benefit from this former Gap Incorporated executive's 30-plus years of experience in strategic planning, business building, leading teams, and mentoring. Much of Sandra's career has focused on building for-profit and non-profit businesses, both large and small, and advising several non-tech startups. She earned her MBA from Santa Clara University and a bachelor's degree from Wellesley College. So welcome to the show, Sandra.
Oh, thank you, Deb. Thanks for inviting me. I'm very pleased to be here.
Well, before we get started on our topic, and we're going to be talking about from superpower to success, if you could please share a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey.
Oh, I'd be happy to. I was sitting in grad school and I was sitting in a class on entrepreneurship, and I was listening to the topic about trying to figure out what to, when you wanted to start a business, how you went about that and all of that. And I was trying to think of the things that made the most sense to me in terms of where there was a need. And it occurred to me that in today's world, it's the two big needs I see are around jobs and around housing. And so I thought, okay, I'm not going to tackle housing, but I can tackle jobs, and it really interests me. And one of the things that interests me about it is that so many people are leaving their corporate jobs and starting businesses. And when people start businesses, especially if you're going into a freelancer, consultant, coach role, oftentimes that's the first jumping out point from a professional career into entrepreneurship, is doing something on your own, a solopreneur. You don't have the guidance. You don't have the guidance that startups would have, for example, and I'm in Silicon Valley, so I kind of think this way. To get started on a business, there isn't that mentorship. There aren't those tools. So what I thought that I would do is to help solopreneurs and give them the guidance and the tools that startups would have to start their businesses. And what I ended up finding was that what I could offer in terms of helping people really was after somebody had been in business for a while, wasn't gaining traction, or was in business for quite a while and decided that they wanted to pivot to grow and scale. Because I really try to help solopreneurs figure out who their ideal client is and find that product market fit, because it's 99% of the reason why they're not gaining traction. And when they pivot, they want to be able to figure that out quickly so that they can grow and scale quickly. So that's how I got started.
Wow, that's terrific. That's terrific. And I definitely could see, the need for that and how you could help them to find their way. So as far as the superpowers, can you give some examples of what that would be?
Well, I can. And can I give some context as to why I lead with that, why I've decided to lead with the superpower?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So one of the things that I found as I've helped people is that, and this is really, it's intuitive, but it's not really for when you come out of a corporate career, because when you've been in a corporate career, for example, your identity is tied to the job that you had previously. And you're so focused on, especially if you were in sales and marketing, you're so focused on how you delivered a product or service to a potential client. So what ends up happening is that when you're out as a solopreneur, you're not thinking about who you are and how you show up. And so I had this, if I can just give you this example really quickly, of this former head of marketing for a tech company who had jumped from her corporate job into being a consultant. And when the consulting gigs that she had as soon as she got out of her corporate job started to dry up, because she'd gotten referrals but then hadn't built any sales pipeline to replace those initial jobs, she was out there trying to attract clients, and she couldn't understand. She had this great service, but she couldn't understand why she wasn't appealing to anybody. And I said, that's because you have to get your foot in the door before you try to offer your product or service. So there has to be some kind of resonance. There has to be some kind of thing that you convey to a potential client where they resonate with you and they want to work with you, or at least they want to have a conversation with you, and you get your foot in the door, and then you can offer that great product or service, and that's fine. But you have to get your foot in the door first. So how do you position yourself? And I used to talk to my clients, and when I covered it in the book that I've written about it, I would refer to it as, what's your differentiator? What is it that sets you apart from everybody else in the industry that's doing exactly the same thing that you're doing? But what I've fine-tuned it to say is, what's your secret sauce? What's that thing that sets you apart from everybody else? That's that makes you your unique self, and that is your unique value proposition. So I now invite people to figure out what their superpower is, what their unique value proposition is, and then tie that to the product or service that they're offering, because the combination of that will resonate with their ideal client. And not only will it get your foot in the door, but it will also help you sell your product or service.
And that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because so many people seem to want to copy what they see other people doing, and then they get lost.
They totally do. And if you base it on you and what you have to offer and what value you provide, and oftentimes when you're figuring out what your superpower is, it's really something that's intangible. I do a workshop. I co-facilitate a workshop every month. And we just had one last weekend, and we do it with a maximum of 6 people. It's very experiential. We really, dive deep into personality traits, past jobs that you've had, all kinds of things. And also really take a good look at your values and your vision for your life and your business and tie it all together and into what your superpower might be. And people are often like really shocked because the thing that they thought was the thing that made them unique and stand out isn't really the thing that they could lead with. It's really through that experiential process where people are witnessing them and listening to them and hearing them and watching them show up that comes out. And it's so much fun.
Well, it's very interesting to think that people may not really know what their superpower is, and then they're surprised when they find out what it is.
Yeah, it's true. It's like we had a young man in the workshop recently who didn't view himself as a visionary, and didn't even view himself really as a leader, although he was showing up that way. You know, we all witnessed his ability to really, you know, his presence and his ability to command a space, but he wasn't thinking of himself that way. And given what his vision was, he definitely was a visionary in terms of what he was trying to accomplish. But neither of those things could he see himself. It was really quite interesting.
And it's probably very hard for people to see themselves in that way,
Yes.
the way that other people do.
It's very true. And another thing, quite frankly, Deb, and this is a message that I want to give to women entrepreneurs especially, that we don't show up in our leadership and we don't recognize that we are leaders in our lives as well as in our work. So when we figure out what our superpowers are, and we approach it from the standpoint of what I call integrated living, integrated leadership, that you know that you're a leader in your life and your work, that you can lead from the front of the room, you can lead from the side of the room, you can lead from behind. Doesn't matter whether you're the person that's standing in front of the room or the boss or the manager. None of that matters. It's how you show up. So if you step into that personal leadership and then you realize that your life is integrated and that your life goals and your business goals are go in tandem and overlap, and that sometimes you have to dial one area of your life up and an area of your business down, and vice versa, one area of your business up and an area of your life down to achieve what you need to achieve. But if you approach things from that standpoint, if you acknowledge your leadership in both areas, if you figure out what your superpower is, what your unique value proposition is, so it's tied to your personal values and the vision for your life and your business, and you stand in all of that, you will be so powerful in your life and your business because you're standing in your value. And then the next piece of it, as a business owner, if you tie your client avatar, the person that you're talking to your, to that, because you go through this whole, exercise of who is your target market and why, and their values will align with your values. That's extremely powerful if you bother to go through that exercise and create that alignment. And then the value proposition of your product or service also can be tied into what I just mentioned. And so, at least in your business, you're suddenly standing in your value, you're standing in your leadership, you're extremely empowered, you're showing up as that person that's your own unique self, and it's like, oh my goodness. And you're going to show up in life like that too, because that's who you are. And the more you step into it, the more it will show up in both places. And it will just be like, it's so powerful. It's hard to describe.
And that sounds so, perfect though, when everything can line up. And,
yes.
You know, when you're dealing with women entrepreneurs or executives, do you feel that they feel that as women, they really can't have it all? They can't really have all these things line up?
I think yes, there is there is that feeling. And part of it, quite frankly, is I think that they've never been able to figure out how to do it. And what I'm offering in terms of asking people to think of both of their life and work being integrated, thinking about being that they are leaders in their life and their work, and then going through that values exercise and figuring out what your core values are, what are the things that are pervasive in your life and your work, but that are your core values, those that you stand by. I mean, for example, mine are integrity, courage, commitment, empathy, and love. Those are values that I hold in my life and my work, and they're my core values. And then you have a vision for how you want your life and your work to be. When you're coming from that place, yes, it is possible, but it's knowing, it's requiring a shift in a mindset. It's requiring an openness to accept, that there is in fact work and life integration. It's really integration. It's not balance. And then to figure out, or to acknowledge that they are the leaders in both. And then to go from that place, I think it's entirely possible. But it's being aware of that there is a way to do it, and to go through that exercise and to step into it.
Well, that's very good to hear then. So, that it is possible to put all those things together and be able to really live in that way. And it sounds as though that also is how entrepreneurs can brand themselves, not just putting together any old thing they think may appeal to whatever's hot in this moment, but they can really brand and position themselves in a certain way that's based on who they are.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why I say it's the starting point. And I have to say, quite honestly, it for anybody that's out there that's perhaps doing a business on the side and you're still working, this applies to your career as well as your business. And that's why it's so important, because it's who you are and it's how you show up in life and work. So if you are, if you're, a manager or a director or a VP and you've got this business on the side, when you figure out your personal brand, and you stand in your superpower and you acknowledge your value, that is something that can be applied to getting a promotion in a business, at work. And it can also be something that can be applied to tying into your potential client avatar and your product and service, so that you're totally aligned across all of those things, and your messaging around everything that you do, everything in life and work is consistent.
Yeah, that's really important, because I think a lot of times that's not always the case.
No, it isn't. And really it's so powerful when it is. And it's so powerful when we recognize our value, we understand our unique value proposition, and we look at who, going back to being an entrepreneur, because that's really, those are really the people that I work with. When you are standing in your value and you're exuding your values and your vision from that place, then, and you go through the process of looking at who your ideal client is and tying in their values, what they would be looking for when they're looking for a product and service, and really making sure that your messaging is really going to attract those people that resonate with your values and your vision and your service. It just makes things so much easier. And most of the time when people do not gain traction in their business, it's because there's something that's not right about the client avatar. They're not trying to attract the right clients, or they're providing a product or service that those potential clients don't want. So when either of those variables get adjusted, or sometimes both, and it's all tied to who you are, your vision, and your service accordingly, that's when you're going to start attracting your clients. And if I can say, Deb, that one of the reasons I think this is so important for solopreneurs is that there are so many out there. So you want to stand out in the market. And then the other thing is there are going to be so many more. The market is going to be flooded with people who are starting their own businesses, especially women, unfortunately, because women have been the most affected group during the pandemic in terms of job loss and things like that. So we're having to look for new opportunities. And for those that are out there starting businesses, this is a very powerful starting point. Figure out who you are and how you sit, and then go from there in terms of the product and service that you're going to offer and how you tie it all together.
And that's great advice, because as I mentioned before, I think a lot of times people will end up following something that they think that's where they need to be, because they see someone doing it and they figure, oh, that must be where everybody else is, so I need to be there too. And then they're not really lined up with who they are and what they want to offer. And then that area gets crowded and ridiculous. And then people just end up giving up a lot of times.
They do. And one of the things that I've discovered, the next step, if you don't mind, if I just share what the next step is that, once you figured out your why, you figured out your purpose as well. You know what you want to, you think you know what you want to offer people. Well, there's an element of market research that needs to be done. And that's when you are looking at what everybody else is doing and seeing what's going on. And you look and see what they're doing and what they're not doing. And you see what gaps there are in the market. And how can you offer something that is, unique to you, that's different, that would be something that people want? Or how can you offer something that's not even available yet? And that's disruptive and innovative. So there are several ways to look at it, but doing market research is key. And then the number one thing that people do not do, and this carries over from the startup tool, that the main startup tool that I employ with people, is going through customer discovery, testing who you think your ideal client is and the product and service that you're offering, and seeing if it lands. And if it doesn't land, why? And look at the data. The number of people and the number of startups that do not go through customer discovery and proof of concept and figure out their product market fit, that is one of the main reasons that startups fail. And that's one of the main reasons that any entrepreneur, small business owner, solopreneur loses faith, doesn't have traction, wants to give up, because they haven't gone through this process or even realized that it is a process and it's a necessary one to figure out whether or not what you're offering is what people want, and whether or not you're talking to the right people. And it's so much easier to do and to get to that point faster when you're coming from that values-driven way of looking at things, because you've got yourself figured out, you got your brand figured out, and you're going to tie that into who you're trying to attract and what product or service you're offering. So that's already part of your positioning in the market. So you've already done that work. Now the rest of it is actually much easier, because you're only focusing on the ideal client and the product or service that you're offering.
Do you find that a lot of times people are resistant to finding their superpower?
I think a lot of people often think they have, and really haven't done the work that I'm describing, because it's a little bit more superficial. When we go through the pre-work, we have pre-work for the workshop, and then we have homework the night of the workshop. And the pre-work there's really a lot of soul searching. Go through your values in your life and your business. Figure out what the core values are. what is your vision for your life and for your business? What is it that you want in 5 years and 10 years? What is it that you want to have achieved? Just, look at that and look at those things about yourself, the transferable skills, those innate qualities that you have. Dive deep and really look back on things that you have experienced, things that you've done, how you've shown up, all of your life, and put all of that together. And it's a combination of all of those things that's going to reveal what your true secret sauce is, what your superpower is, the thing that makes you stand out from everybody else.
So in terms of the people you've worked with and everything, how long a process do you feel that would be for the entrepreneur to be, let's say, who's listening now and is really thinking about doing this, but has no idea how long it will take in this instant society we have? Everybody wants to just jump right in right away. There's nothing wrong with that. But as you're saying, there's so much work that should be done ahead of time. What do you say to that person who's just so impatient to get started no matter what?
Well, I would say do get started and figure out what your why is. What is it? What's your purpose? What is it that you want to do, and have that figured out. And then, go through the process that I described, and you're going to come up with a first draft, as my co-facilitator says, of where you're at. And then that testing and refining of all of the things, how your superpower is landed, because your superpower is going to evolve in terms of it's going to get stronger and stronger. The more that you apply it, the more you're going to realize what it really is and how it stands out. And so with like everything, when you're actually practically applying it, it's going to, you've got to get out there and test it. So you're going to continue to do that, and you're going to be, figuring out your ideal client. You're going to be figuring out the product and service. So you've got to give yourself a runway. You've got to give yourself at least 6 months, possibly even as long as a year, to really get all of this sorted out and really be gaining traction and being able to have a viable business. And so one of the things that I suggest that people do is that you look at other streams of income that can tide you over until you're making money in your business, and you get out there and you do the work, and you just keep trying and testing, and and you're going to get some nibbles and you're going to get some bites, and it could be sporadic, but when it's working, and the faucet will open and you will have potential clients in your funnel. But you got to go through the work of figuring out what it is exactly, who your people are, and what it is exactly they want from you. And it takes time.
Yes, that's true. So that's something for people to keep in mind, and it will probably save them a lot of grief on the other side.
It's setting expectations. And that's really, once again, that goes back to the startup world. In the startup world, when you have a mentor, you're told, and they take you through that customer discovery process. The Airbnb guys were boots on the ground. They were out there actually taking pictures of potential properties. They were meeting with potential landlords. They were actually doing it themselves in the very beginning. So you got to get out. You got to do that testing. You got to see what works and what doesn't. You got to see what lands. You got to look at the data and keep testing and refining it. And then it will click, and you will start to attract, your ideal clients.
That's perfect. So there is hope for everyone who is probably thinking, I got to take this time, but the time is important, and it's worthwhile. So that's something I think everybody can take away from what you've shared here. But Sandra, could you please let everyone know where they can find out more about you?
Sure. My website is lifereinvented.com. And I've got obviously a programs page. And at the bottom of the programs page, there's a link to Supercharge Your Superpower workshop. So that's our monthly workshop. And I also have a book for new entrepreneurs, especially those that are trying to figure all this out. It's called Reinventing Your Life, Your Guide to Finding Fulfillment and Starting Your Business. And it's a book and a workbook. So it's very experiential. So that's available on the website. And just contact me at Sandra@lifereinvented.com. I'd be happy to speak with you. But I cannot emphasize enough, because we kind of got off on the how do you start as an entrepreneur tack. I really, really cannot emphasize enough that no matter what stage you are in your business, once you figure out your superpower, it's either going to help you get started, or it's going to help you amplify, or it's going to make, all of the pieces fall into place, because it will make it so much easier to attract your ideal client, and it will make it so much easier to convey as you are selling your product and service in that messaging.
Mm-hmm. And that's an excellent point, actually. And, as we're talking, of course, the show is geared to women entrepreneurs. What's the important advice that you would offer to women entrepreneurs right now?
To not be discouraged, because there are going to be, there are going to be a lot. There are a lot now, and there are going to be a lot more. And, to really think about whatever you go into, whatever you decide to do, really think carefully whether you want to enter entrepreneurship through multi-level marketing, whether you want to enter it, with somebody else's product or service, whether or not you want to develop your own. Just be really intentional. This is the thing I would ask you all. Please be very intentional about what you do, and not reactionary in terms of, I've got to find something fast to fill that void in my income. Please really be thoughtful about what you choose to do, how you choose to do it, and look for mentors, and just really, please don't do it in a reactive way, because those businesses that are sustainable, those that have sustained the past economic downturns, are those that pivoted and really made the adjustments to their business in an intentional way and not in a reactive way, and they're still around. So I'd ask you, if there's nothing else that you take away from this, to be intentional about how you proceed and start with your superpower, please.
Well, that's great advice, because as you mentioned, with the economic downturn and with everything else that is going on, a lot of people will be looking to do their own thing, and particularly women will be looking at opportunities, and we definitely want them to find great opportunities and not end up in a situation that they're not doing the right thing for themselves. Cause that, as we were saying, that can really happen when you don't know your real customer, you don't really know yourself and what you have to offer. So there's a lot of pitfalls that can happen if you don't take the time.
Yes. And also just please keep in mind, that you don't know what you don't know, and it's okay to not know. And there are resources out there to help, and there are communities out there to help. That's one of the things. When you go to my website, you'll see that at the bottom of the homepage, there's a link to join one of my meetup communities. I have a meetup community of over 20,000 people all over the United States, and we're expanding internationally. And so, I hold educational events, and I also hold networking events that are nationwide, and we're actually expanding into Canada, and we're going to go into the UK and all of that. So we're really trying to help people have opportunities outside of their local areas, so that you're not that people start to think more expansively about what's available. And so, yes. Mm-hmm. So please look for resources.
And that's a great idea also, because as you're saying, everything that's happened and as far as a lot of people thinking about having to pivot from what they were doing before with the changes and the connection that those groups could offer, I think it'd be really, really helpful.
Yes, that's what we're finding. Many people, we have people that come, we do a nationwide networking group at least twice a month, and we have the same people, joining us and new people joining all the time. And one of the things that they appreciate is that they said, we really are so used to doing business one-on-one. We're used to going and having lunches with potential clients. We're used to having live events to meet with people, and can't do that anymore, and really are finding it difficult to figure out how to navigate online. Well, that's one of the things that my community helps people do, is to figure out how to navigate. And we create this place at least twice a month for networking, where everybody keeps coming back because they have found opportunities and they do appreciate it. And you come to the event, you make a connection, and then you continue the connection offline. And it's very rich, and it's just, there are opportunities like that.
Well, that's great to hear that there are those opportunities, and that will certainly help people who right now may not really know what they should do next, and that way they know that they can connect with others. Mm-hmm. That will help them and give them some ideas and connections. So I think that is key for everyone to take advantage of. So Sandra, this has been a really informative conversation. You've shared a lot of good things, and I think this is something that listeners will really need going forward, even if they have established businesses, because there's definitely been changes. I don't think any business can say that they haven't had some effect through all of this. So this has been really helpful for everyone to know. But as I usually ask my guests, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share?
I think what I'd like to share is there is a silver lining in the situation that we're currently in, and the silver lining is opportunity, and to realize that by doing business predominantly online, it's opened up a tremendous amount of opportunity outside of one's local area, and to embrace that and not be afraid of it, and to just look for resources that will help you navigate it. But please see the possibility in the situation, because there is so much possibility.
Yes, that's so true. And I really thank you for sharing that thought. That would be really uplifting for those who may feel right now that they're not sure what their next steps are. So, Sandra, this has been a wonderful conversation, as I said, and I want to thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me, and I've really enjoyed myself. And I invite everyone that wants to reach out to me, Sandra at lifereinvented.com, or through my website, and I'd be happy to talk about next steps.
Wonderful. So everyone, I know you've enjoyed it. Please make sure you share this on social media, share it with your friends, and definitely visit Sandra's site and check out her services and her book, and just kind of see what you can do to move forward and to look for the opportunities. I think that's the way that we can move forward. So once again, it's been Women Entrepreneurs Radio with your host, Deborah Bailey. I want to thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye now. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to stop by womenentrepreneursradio.com to read extended bios of the show guests, and also find links there for their websites and any offers that they have shared with you. And stop by our Facebook page, facebook.com/women entrepreneurs.